Welcome back to the Electrical Building Design Show. I'm your host, David Robison. Today we have a guest, Dave Fetzer from SSOE, joining us. They are using ElectroBIM at their company, and he recently attended Autodesk University as an electrical engineer. So we're going to talk to him about that today.
Yeah.
To get us started, Dave, can you introduce yourself, who you are, what do you work on, what kind of projects does your team typically do?
Absolutely. So my name, like you said, Dave Fetzer. Day to day, I'm an electrical engineer. Have a degree in engineering, but I'm also kind of a BIM leader type role. I'm not gonna say BIM manager, but BIM leader. Working on developing families and workflows and things like that, on top of working on everyday project work. And then as far as projects go at SSOE, my group specifically focuses more on the manufacturing and industrial facilities type work.
Very good. Let's start by talking about Autodesk University.
Yeah.
Have you been to Autodesk University before, and what's your history with the conference?
So I haven't. I wanted to go for the past couple of years, haven't been able to go. And so the past few years, I've done the kind of online free videos and stuff like that have been put out, but nothing too in depth. But yeah, this year was the first year that I was luckily able to go and really enjoyed it.
All right. If you had to sum it up in one word, what would that be?
I think eye-opening would be a good word, because just because of how much stuff is coming down the line and how many different viewpoints there are of what it is that we're going to be doing in the future, whether you look 3, 5, 10 years down the line. I think everybody has kind of a different outlook of what our industry is going to look like, and it's kind of eye-opening and a little nerve-wracking almost to wonder, oh, okay, am I falling in the correct the correct line here?
Yeah, there's always a lot of people. It's always fun to meet with the other people. And like you said, it is eye opening to get so many different perspectives
Yeah,
from the
ab
conference.
absolutely.
So what was eye opening? What kind of things were your eyes being open to in terms of where the industry is going?
Yeah, so the biggest thing, I think everybody knows AI is the new thing, right? That's the new toy that everybody loves and everybody's excited about. And that's really what a lot of the conference I felt focused on this year was AI. How are we going to use AI moving forward? And a lot of it is discipline specific. So, if you're, say, architecture, you might be able to use AI to do, um, give you a window layout, like they talked about in the opening keynote, give you a window layout for a building based on the solar calculations and things like that. But on the electrical side, right, for me, where I'm more, my expertise lies, it's more of an analysis tool or a kind of a helping hand in order to do more repetitive tasks and the more monotonous things. Like we're creating views, creating sheets, creating panel schedules, putting those on sheets, making sure everything is accounted for where it's supposed to be, making sure all of the names are updated everywhere. If I change a panel name, is it updating in the panel schedule in the single line? That's the kind of stuff that I see kind of moving forward with AI, more so than, hey, here's a room, give me a layout, type thing. But that was one of the things that was really kind of, like I said, almost nerve wracking, is hearing all the different opinions on, there were people there who I talked to that really they thought, I don't know if AI is going to be the thing, it's a fad basically. All the way through people of like, yeah, we might be able to get rid of some engineers and do it this way. And it's like, I think we need to find a good middle ground as an industry on where we're going with that.
Yeah, I don't think AI is going to disappear, but
No,
it's also not going to be replacing the design engineer. It's a question of where does AI fit in the workflow and what can it be used for?
exactly.
Did you see any specific places where you think you can be using it in the next couple months?
Yeah, so again, in that the opening keynote that they did a really good job of showing some of the AI that's coming down the line for Autodesk, the new Autodesk assistant that they're going to be putting in Revit. Um, Basically, it's ChatGPT for Revit, and it obviously is going to be a big thing. With we need to be sure we're checking what it's doing. I just continually harp on that and hit on that, but using it for things like what they did in the presentation was they had it basically, like I said, create sheets, create views based on view templates, based on these scope boxes, place these views on these sheets, order them in this way. That's the kind of stuff that I'm actually really excited for. It's small stuff, it's simple stuff, but it's something that, working in the facilities and industrial space, a project I just got done working on had about, I think, 185 sheets. So if we're able to automate how, even 50 of those sheets get created and get laid out, really makes a big difference in our workflow.
How do you think that AI is going to compare versus just like doing manual scripting?
It'll make it more accessible, right? So I'm someone, I can work in Dynamo. I'm dangerous in Dynamo, and that's a good and bad thing. I don't know how to code yet. I'm working on learning how to do that. But I mean, right now I can make a script that can go in and do stuff like that. But a say we have a co-op that comes in and they're learning how to use Revit, being able to do stuff like that just through typing it in a box, saying, "Hey, create these views, create these sheets," will make it a lot more accessible for everybody moving forward, and a lot less intimidating as well.
So it's going to open up who can do these
Absolutely,
things. Okay.
absolutely.
All right. So moving off of AI just a little bit,
Yep.
where did you get the most value at AU? Was it the classes, hallway conversations, expo, meetups?
I think a little bit of everything. The opening keynote, I think, was the best, I'll say, quote unquote, class as far as opening up for, at least for AI stuff goes. There's a lot of really cool innovation going on in some of the classes. But the one that I really liked the most were some of the meetups. And that kind of turned into those hallway conversations. And there was a BIM manager VDC meetup that I was a part of that was really, a lot of it was kind of what's your everyday workflow, and then also how did you get to where you want to be, right? So just talking to those people who are doing those things every day, day to day, that I am kind of passionate about was really nice.
Yeah. So again, the eye opening, being able to
Yeah.
talk to other people.
Yep.
Any key takeaway from any of those conversations?
I think the biggest key takeaway is not only for my company, but for every company as well, that might be listening or watching this is, Revit is definitely not AutoCAD. And my company, I'm lucky we do a good job of having teams in place to manage things and to manage our content and our templates and all that. But one thing I heard a lot of from people was that a lot of companies are treating Revit like they're AutoCAD because their senior management, that's what they're used to. They're used to the AutoCAD world where, if we're honest, I mean, it's lines. There's nothing really to manage. And so companies, in order to be successful, really need to be able to invest time and money into managing their content, managing their templates and their workflows, and having at least one person who can dedicate their time to that, whether it's full time, whether it's half time. Being able to dedicate time to that is a big thing that will change over time and become more acceptable. But right now it's a challenge within the kind of BIM management world of companies don't want to spend the money to manage and develop their Revit content because they didn't have to when it was AutoCAD.
Is that then just kind of consensus you were getting from the people at the meetups?
Yes. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. And like I said, I'm lucky in the point where my company, we have a lot of task forces and initiatives where we're tackling these things head on. Is there more that we could be doing? Absolutely, but there always is. So, but there was a lot of people that I talked to where they said, I'm working in projects and I just kind of develop stuff as I go. And that's, really not a great way to work because then, Steve might have one family while Chris has another one. And it's, and you're losing your company standard at that point.
Yeah. I always find this fascinating when we're talking about how we used to do things in AutoCAD and now we have to transition to Revit, because everyone who's saying that grew up 30 years ago when we were transitioning from hand drafting. I don't understand why they don't remember those
And
conversations they used to have.
it's an interesting thing that you say that. So I think, from hand drafting to AutoCAD, right? And I know there's a lot you can do in AutoCAD that I know I didn't. I did use AutoCAD a lot during my co-op and my first job. It was pretty much a 50-50 mix of AutoCAD Revit, but AutoCAD I feel like was a lot less of a jump from hand drafting to AutoCAD than there is from AutoCAD to Revit. Because at the end of the day, like I look at AutoCAD, and this might just be my Revit brain talking, but I look at AutoCAD as, I'm drawing lines. We have symbols built in and stuff like that, but at the end of the day, it's line work. Well, Revit, I mean, we're modeling a building. So I think it was a lot less of a jump from, hey, we're using pen and paper to, hey, we're going to just draw these lines on the computer, as opposed to, okay, now we have to make sure that our dimensions on our equipment is right. We have to make sure a 3D view looks at least comparable to what it's going to look like. It might not have to be perfect depending on your level of design, but I think it's definitely a big jump.
Yeah. For the sessions, you said that you're working a little bit in Dynamo.
Correct.
Were there any sessions that talked about Dynamo? Did you learn anything there?
Yeah, there was. So they did have a kind of what's new in Dynamo session. A couple people from Autodesk directly put it on, and it was. I'm excited for it. They have a lot of new features. A lot of them, again, contain AI usability. They have an option now where their AI system will be able to look into AutoCAD files. So if you have a Civil 3D or something along those lines, it'll be able to look into that and use that in whatever you're having it do. But as someone who I said before, I don't code. I want to learn how, and I'm slowly working on learning how. It opens up a lot of flexibility in using Dynamo, because now their kind of autofill node option is all AI run. You can go back to the old option if you want to, but it uses AI now to, autofill the nodes, to pick the nodes that you might want to use. And so it really does kind of open up a lot of availability as far as who can use it and what you're able to do.
Nice. You're able to see all that happening at Autodesk University.
Yep. That was all one big presentation. That was one of the busier presentations as far as attendance goes.
There were a lot of people at that one.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, Dynamo, it's taking the scripting down to the kind of the BIM manager level where you can start getting in there without having to jump into the .NET actual coding.
Exactly. And if you know Python, you're able to do so much more in it. So adding the AI really helps to kind of, work within that.
Nice. Were there any interesting case studies you saw?
Yeah. So there was one that I really liked. Part of it is just because I'm a massive sports fan, in case you couldn't tell by looking behind me. But the other, and it was funny because, I mean, side note, it made me laugh that this was one of the few sessions that had a line going into it before it opened.
Wow.
That I attended, at least, and it was pretty much all guys. And they were there because the study was by Pinnacle Infotech, and it was the World Cup stadium in Doha and how they designed and built it. So it was all these guys wanting to see how a stadium gets built, right? So one thing that they did, and it is something that is very specialized. It's something that is really only applicable if you're the designer and constructor of a building, but it worked really well. And I think it's something that can really be improved moving forward and be added into job scopes and all that. Is the stadium had this very intricate, almost like a bird's nest exoskeleton of steel. And so what they did is they designed it in Revit, did the 3D renderings, and then when the steel was getting manufactured in China, they had sent them Faro laser scanners, and the manufacturer then scanned in the each piece of steel that was manufactured. So the actual piece of steel that was going to be shipped to the site and installed. So with that, they were able to see the differences and the tolerances of what was different from the actual piece versus the theoretical design piece. They then took that actual piece, put it into the model, determined what changes needed to be made around it to other pieces, and then by the time it got to the site already knew what changes needed to be made and what needed to be done to get it to fit, and they were within, I mean, millimeters of where they were supposed to be on these massive pieces of steel, all because they were able to scan it in, get the actual dimensions of every square inch of this piece of steel, and and get it installed correctly because it was in the model correctly. And then once building was happening, they were using those scanners to do measurements of what was constructed versus what was designed, and just that way they're a step ahead before each different trade gets there or each step happens. They already know what to expect and what changes are going to have to be made. So that was a pretty cool kind of construction aspect of design.
What do you see a typical firm being taken away from that? Who's not building a bird's nest steel cage
Yeah,
around their
so
building?
that's kind of where the tricky part comes, right? So it's not something that a lot of places can benefit that greatly from. As far as doing it all piece by piece, step by step, but I think the biggest takeaway would be during um construction, using those scanners and things like that to do as builts and to give your client a, so it's kind of skipping the construction phase of scanning and all that, going into once it's built, doing the scans, and then being able to give your client a true 3D rendered model of their building. So then in the future, if they need to do updates, if they need to, trace something back, it's easier for them to go in that model and find that element, trace it back. Say they have a leak or something, they can see where that water is coming from or whatever, situation arises. I think that's where a lot of that could come into play.
Yeah, that's trying to extend it, the building information model. There's the
Exactly.
AEC, they keep wanting they've added AECO where you're getting that operations, where you're
Yeah.
trying to take the building past construction
Yep.
to the actual
And
use of it.
that also will make our lives easier on the design side, because now say, this company comes to us in 10 years and says, "Hey, we want to, do a renovation, or we want to do this or that." Well, they already have their 3D model of how
Mm.
how their building is constructed. So now that eliminates a lot of guesswork on our end on where are things getting fed from, where are things located, how are things routed. Um, so, it might be, again, it's one of those things where it's an upfront cost to get that done, but to maintain it and to use it in the future is a big cost savings.
And then you're hoping that in 2035, you can open up a 2025 Revit file.
Hey, yeah, you never know. AI will convert it for us.
There we go. That's where AI will come in. Exactly. Don't need to worry about that. Were any booths on the expo floor interesting? What'd you
Yeah,
see
there was a
there?
couple. Obviously, I got to give you guys a shout out. You guys are one of my favorite software in the Revit world. One that I really was interested in was a company called Puros. It's a content
Mhm.
management.
They were across from us last year.
Yeah, it's a content management company, and what's really cool about them is they also are using AI. This is another great place to use it, where you can basically link your ACC, BIM 360, Forma, whatever we're calling it now, account to them, and then you can load in whatever projects you're working on, and it will go in and it'll look at all of the drafting views in your project, in your model, and it'll take all of your details out, and it will analyze them and look at them and say, okay, this one, they said their threshold, I believe, is 90%. So this detail looks like this other one that we have. If it's 90% similar, we're going to ignore it and we're going to say we already have that detail. But if it's less than 90% similar, it's going to add it in as a new detail. Also becomes searchable based on the title of it, obviously, but also what's in it. So if you have a text that says, um, let's say it's a light pole based detail, and it'll say, electrical handhole, whatever in the pole. You can search handhole and it'll come up and it'll pull that up based on the text that's within it. It can also analyze what's in it. So if I typed in light pole, even if I didn't have light pole anywhere in that, it'll be able to determine, okay, this is a detail of a light pole, and give you that. And then it also uses AI to determine, okay, this has been used in 15 projects. Hey, maybe you should add this to your standards or things like that. Which is another great way of using AI. And like I said, AI is amazing at analysis. If you give it data, it is better than any human at analyzing data and analyzing and giving recommendations on, you should look at doing this, you should look at doing that. And I think that's a great place to start.
So they're actually able to take the data and then
Yeah.
feed it in. So they actually have access to the data. That's the tricky part. A lot of times is getting data. So
That's
they
the
have
biggest
that
thing.
good data
Yep.
set.
Yep. And then there's a direct link into Revit. Basically, you go into your dashboard for them. You say, okay, I want this, 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 and this. You put it in your little shopping cart thing, right? Actually, they have a term for it. I can't remember what it is. And then when you go to Revit, you just hit their add-in, and it automatically brings those details in. And so it keeps everything cleaner, keeps everything more straightforward, and it's a very, very nice system. It looks like to work in. And then another one that I was interested in was the Faro booth. They have the 3D scanners and all of that. So that's something that, in the future, when eventually I think that'll take off, is doing the 3D scans of not only existing conditions, but also the new build conditions. That was one. And then finally, Augmento was one that I talked to. And they do kind of automatic conduit routing. We are currently looking at, I can't remember the name of the system, which is not a great look, but we're looking at a different one right now that works within the Revit environment. Augmenta does a great job, but with them you kind of have to export all of your info into their system in order to run all of their calculations and all that. But yeah, that was another one. Anything along those lines of automating the monotonous stuff as much as we can. Not necessarily, like I said, not necessarily doing design, but doing conduit routing from one spot to another is kind of a big thing for us, especially in the industrial facilities side.
Yeah. So Augmento is doing the conduit routing. You guys model some of your conduits at least. That's
Yeah,
always
so
the question. Like for design
yeah,
engineers, how much do you do?
yeah, so typically we'll do kind of our power conduits. So we'll have our main power duct banks coming in. And then if kind of at the most, we'll have from any unit subs or any switchboards going to like the power distribution panels. So any of the larger conduits, especially ones that are running underground and in through concrete, just to make sure that those can be put in during all the foundation pours and everything. But yeah, other than that, we don't model too much of our conduits, especially when it comes to branch circuiting. But if, with tools like that, it's something that, we might be able to offer, because it'll take our cost way down, and it might be more desirable from the client at that point.
Yeah. You said they go outside Revit to do that?
Yeah, so the way that I understood it was, it's almost like they have kind of a dashboard software that you kind of export your model into, and they will kind of work their magic there, and then you can import it back in. I wasn't 100% sure on how exactly that worked. Um, but I know that, like, when I was talking to them, they were talking about, having to have, basically, there's a conduit schedule within their software that is being used to route everything. And yeah, so I wasn't too sure on how that part of it worked.
Okay.
But yeah, what we're using right now is within the Revit environment.
So not leaving Revit at all. Okay. Wrapping up AU, are there any memorable new connections you made with people at the
Yeah, there's a
conference?
couple. So obviously got to meet you finally for the first time after talking to you for a couple years.
Yeah, that's always fun to meet customers.
So yeah, that I mean we had that dinner that night, which was a lot of fun. Met a lot of cool people there. And it's always fun kind of talking to people that work in our industry and seeing what they do outside of work. So I know one of the guys that was at the dinner is, he's on the drum corps for the Kansas City Chiefs, and another person we were all talking is a musician, and like that kind of stuff was cool. I did met up with someone who she was from Vancouver, and so it was kind of cool hanging out with her and talking to her about how everything works on their end and how they tend to do different things. She was from a smaller company up there, so it was interesting to see how worlds differ a little bit.
Yeah, everyone does things a little bit differently.
Yeah,
Sometimes company to company, and sometimes the geography matters. Just different regions of the country have different ways of doing it. All right. Well, thanks for all those insights on Autodesk University. Let's pivot now and talk about what you guys are doing with ElectroBIM at SSOE in your division. You're in the AMF side of the company, you said. Uh,
correct. Yeah.
Walk us through where things are standing with your rollout of our software.
Yeah, so right now we're in a weird kind of, I'll say, purgatory phase, because I have everything is ready to go. Everything is customized, everything is working. Obviously there's a couple bugs here and there, but when we customize it, I like to think I went a little deeper in customization than most places do. So I was expecting some bugs and some stuff like that, but which is totally expected and understood. Um, the reason that I say we're kind of in purgatory is right now we're also working on rebuilding our Revit template and our Revit families and our shared parameters and all of that. So while I have everything ready for Design Master, we can't necessarily roll it out until we get our families done and our shared parameters and all of that. But I will say that I have been using ElectroBIM on a project I've been working on. It's a pretty large, about 1.5 million square foot manufacturing facility. We have over 10 unit substations that all come in at 15 kV, step down to 480, and I probably at least, oh man, 25 I-line power distribution panels and probably 50 branch panel boards. And it's a very in-depth project as far as the electrical system goes. That's also 480 volt 3-wire coming in, so there's no neutral coming in. So we have a lot of transformers converting to 480 277. And I opted to use that as my, like, quote unquote test project for ElectroBIM. And there was a little bit of a learning curve at the beginning, but now I can say we sent it to IFC this past week, and it is incredible how much easier it made this project. And I just started just today, actually, before this call, I ran generate one line on the kind of secondary building that's more of a straightforward, we're coming in off a transformer right at 480 into a switchboard into some power distribution panels, like nothing too crazy on that building part of the site. And performed again phenomenally. It's a great tool that I'm super excited about and passionate about, and definitely pushing people who are not who are a little bit more, I'll say they're more nervous about using this kind of software. But I'm definitely I'm excited about it. And yeah,
So for this project, what ended up working really well? You said obviously there's a bunch of setup time, and that's kind of typical for any of this BIM stuff.
absolutely.
It's always extra time up front to save time at the end.
Yes.
Uh, where were you seeing that time savings at the end?
So for me, the time savings was simply so all of our panel boards and distribution panels and everything are named because of the size of the facility. We name them based on their column grids, right? So if it's near the intersection of B2, it's LP-B2. We've had a lot of situations where panels are getting moved, relocated, we're deleting some, adding some. That is where the time saving really comes, because using the Design Master software, before that, if I change panel B2 to B4, now I have to go in and change that in the model, in the panel schedule, depending on how my panel schedules are set up, and in the single line. Same thing goes with transformers. Our transformers are all named the same way, and a lot of the times we'll have, our lighting panel with our transformer just directly above it, and so you're having to change it in 2 to 3 places per device. And this project's been going on for a year, and so you can imagine how many changes have been made. And
A
so
project with changes.
yeah, I know, right? That never happens. But, yeah, so that's, I think, where the biggest time saving has come, along with, especially towards the end of the project, more towards the IFP timeframe. We were looking at panels and saying, okay, we have this as a 400 amp panel. Maybe we don't need that much. Well, let's knock it down to 225. And again, doing it there and having it update automatically. I'll say automatically. We have to run the calculation, but we'll say that's an understood step. Having it update automatically everywhere is huge, and update the wire sizing and the breakers and yeah. So that's huge, and especially when we're changing amperage ratings on panels, having it update not only the panel itself, but also the feeding breaker from whatever's upstream was huge.
Yeah. For getting all the customization right for the single line diagrams,
Yes.
how did that go for you? Because you said you went pretty deep, and based on our conversations, I think you have gone pretty deep.
Yes.
Uh,
So one of the things, so I kind of did, so a little backstory on that. I did a kind of a demo for my management team when I first opened up Design Master or ElectroBIM for my company, and created a single line and said, hey, here's how this works. Here's how this looks. Here's what it is. And they said, that's awesome. It doesn't look right. And so we have our standard single line detail items, and so everything had to be updated. And so I went through every single family we have and made sure that we have a the correct single line detail item for that. It took me a little bit to figure out how exactly the system saw everything. I will say that your support contacts are phenomenal at explaining stuff, because I probably drove them crazy. They probably groaned every time my email popped up. But it's a very good way of doing it, in where you have your detail item family with all of your Design Master, wire in, wire out, all of that, all the parameters in there, then loaded into a project file where you have all of your tagging, all of your annotations and all of that, then having that be what gets pulled into the model. So you're already setting your tags, you're already setting any of your annotations. So once I kind of learned how it worked, it got much easier. There's a lot that you can do with it once I kind of got into it and learned. So not only do I have a different customized file for each piece of equipment that we have, I also within that have 4 different phases of new, future, demo, existing that it uses, and it's working very well as far as how everything is categorized, how everything comes into the models. The biggest step now is just, once we get our families figured out that we want to use, is making sure that all of the settings in those families are aligned properly, so that it's bringing in the correct items. Bringing in the correct phasing is a big thing. Because I did learn, when you do it the way that I have it, where you have all the different phasing in, it likes to do alphabetical order as far as phasing. So it'll start with demo, So I always have to make sure that new is selected, but that's something that, like I said, once we have the families figured out, it'll default to new.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been working phenomenally.
Yeah, there's a lot to get the customization right. And like you said, we have extended what Revit does with that second project file to get the annotation tags in there, because Revit
Yeah.
didn't do what we wanted it to do for the labeling of stuff.
Yeah, and it's really nice too because we're able to add in a lot of kind of additional, um, I guess, features, I'll say. So for grounded transformers, right, having that grounding electrode size is based off of the wire size coming off of secondary and all that. So we were able to add that as a tag in the project file for the family, and then it will we have a kind of a lookup table that it'll base off of, what wire is it using coming out and all that, and it'll size that for us automatically. So a lot of stuff like that has been really, really good, especially like I said, when you have as many devices. I think we had, I want to say 18 or 19 single line sheets for this project. So it's definitely a big undertaking, but it's been working great.
Good. We generally don't recommend you choose a big project to roll it out on, but it sounds like you've
I
made it work.
I will say I understand why, but I don't think I would have done it any differently. Because I now have seen pretty much everything that we're going to see um within a single line within a project. I am now able to kind of handle whatever it is that we see now. Where we had, transfer switches, disconnects, motor starters, VFDs, like you name it, we had it on this project. So, it's been a really good project it was a lot to bite off. It was a lot to chew, but it's working great.
So you'd be confident that when you roll it out, it's going to
Absolutely.
work on other projects.
Absolutely.
So what is the plan now to start rolling it out to the rest of the company?
Yeah, so we'll hypothetically say all of our families and shared parameters and everything is done.
Your step one,
Um,
finish everything else.
Step one is finish everything else. Also, I feel like usually you probably don't recommend setting up ElectroBIM before having your families set up. Uh,
It
but
can work any way you want it to. We'll work
but
with you.
but now that we'll hypothetically say everything is done and ready to go, um, it's going to be training. So I have a kind of a Word document. It'll be a PDF that gets sent out to everybody that will have every family that uses it within there. Basically, it's going to be a kind of a how-to guide slash just a user guide on our Revit families. So it'll have an image of what the symbol looks like. It'll have a use case. Use this when you're doing this. Use this when you're doing this. It also will lay out every parameter that's within that family, because it's also going to be used kind of as a QC document. So I have, for example, a motor connection family that will show a motor connection symbol on the single line, and you put in your voltage, your number of poles within Revit, and then you also enter in your horsepower. Well, the horsepower is going to look at a lookup table that references, I can't remember off the top of my head, it references the NEC table that has
the
all the
NEC horsepower
FLAs.
table.
Yep. And so it references that table, and then based on that, it'll take the FLA from the table, calculate your apparent load. And so within this document, I've got, your E underscore voltage is your voltage, your E number of poles is this. And then for E underscore horsepower, these are the options that you can use because you have to use something within that lookup table. Okay, if now let's say we have a, 1/10 horsepower motor that isn't in that lookup table, this parameter is an override, so you can just put in your FLA directly if you want to. And then, it goes down and there's a section for calculated parameters that have no user input. So all of the design master parameters are that way, where there's no real user input for the DMET, DMER, things like that. But it kind of will describe briefly what it is, what it does, what to look for if you're looking for something or whatever. And then for, the apparent load, it'll have the formula that's used to calculate that. So it's a QC step for one of our senior engineers who doesn't use Revit can now look through this PDF and say, let's tweak this formula a little bit to do it this way or that way, and then it also gives you a place to see, okay, I put these numbers in and I got this. Why did I get that? So it's kind of a user guide. It's also a QC step. So that's one big thing I'm doing. And then another thing is going to be doing short little, I'm talking 30 seconds to a minute. Hey, you need to do this. This is how videos of this is how you do this. And just have a library of those that is kind of searchable. And that PDF also is searchable, and it's all bookmarked and broken down. So it's easy to find what you need. And then also there will be we haven't decided how long the training is going to be yet. I think we're going to have a couple guinea pigs that go through to determine how long the training will be. But we're going to have a hands-on training session with everybody. We'll do a couple different sessions, and we'll probably, I think the best way that we've found to do some trainings is to have different training models. So we'll probably use the famous Snowden Towers project that everybody who uses Revit knows, and just kind of show everybody how to use all the different features and things like that.
How big a team are you rolling it out to?
I believe we're around 40 total, but I would say comfortably, continuously using it, probably 30 max.
All right, so, but that's a pretty big size team that you got to get trained on.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So I think that's another reason why we're wanting to do so many different options as far as how the training is available. So, we want to do the hands-on training, the official training of it, but also have a lot more resources available to everybody. If you need to see how to do this or that, it's there.
Yeah. You're going to be running that training in addition to your projects?
Yep. I'll be running that and putting that together. So, hopefully I think I see a light at the end of the tunnel where some projects are going out. And so we're busy enough where everybody else, can take on whatever needs to be done. And then I can kind of take a little bit of time to put some stuff together, but
okay. All right. Well, wrapping up and looking at the big picture, how do you see AU and electrobim shaping your future career path?
So, like I said in the beginning, I'm an electrical engineer. I have my FE, so technically I do have a couple letters after my name. But I think the biggest thing for me is my passion really comes with the BIM and the Revit development and all of that. That's what I really want to be doing and what I really want to be working on. And I know a lot of people will look at that and say, oh, you're an electrical engineer. You should be doing project work. You should be doing this. But I think there's also value in having engineers be the ones that are doing the development. Yeah, I know we cost a little bit more, which is what the bottom line usually comes down to. But having somebody who understands how an electrical system works and understands not only, the Revit, does Revit let it work, but does it meet code? Does it logically and theoretically make sense in the theoretical sense of how engineers think? There's a lot of value to that. And also, every engineer that I met, the reason we're engineers is because we're problem solvers. And that's kind of how I look at a Revit family whether I'm editing one that already exists or creating one from scratch. It's a problem. How do I solve it? The problem is I need a panel board family that is easy to use for everybody. That's a big problem. How do I solve it? And so that's something that I really enjoy, and talking to people at AU really kind of opened my eyes to this is a possibility of something that I can do, and I am actually 2 weeks from today. So keep me in your thoughts. I'm taking my PE. So, my plan has been and all along still is to be a PE, get my PE, but I really have that passion for BIM management and Revit management and development and all of that. So
I think that mix of the the PE, the electrical engineer who's also doing the BIM managing is going to add a lot of value. Like you're saying, you're not just making the families, you know that, okay, we're going to have a motor and it has a horsepower and it references this NEC table, and what all that means as an
Yes.
electrical engineer is going to be, hugely valuable as you put your
Yeah,
stuff
because I
together.
mean, I can, my 10-year-old nephew is amazing at computers. I can say, hey, look at this table here and type these numbers into Excel and let me know when you're done. But he doesn't know what that means.
Yeah.
He doesn't understand any of the details of it or how those numbers were achieved. So I think that makes a big difference, as well as, when you're looking at different just different settings and how different things are connected and all that. It makes a really big difference.
All right. So for anyone curious about attending AU or trying ElectroBIM, what's a piece of advice you would give them?
So for AU is definitely go. I mean, whatever you got to do, whoever you got to talk to, do your best to get there. It's not only is it was it something that was very beneficial learning wise, it was something that made the learning fun. And it was one of those things where, like I said, I met up with her name was Rhea, the girl from Vancouver that I was talking about earlier. Her and I, we ended up hanging out in Nashville, and it was funny because typical nerds, most people end up on Broadway in Nashville and they're partying, having a good time. We're sitting there listening to music, talking about Revit. And so it's a chance to advance your knowledge and what you know and how you do things, but do it in a setting that isn't necessarily sitting in an office or sitting behind a desk and talking to somebody. You're able to go wherever it's at, just because it's, in, Vegas doesn't mean you have to go out and party and have fun and all this stuff and not talk about work. It's one of those things where you're able to find kind of a good balance of it. And it was a lot of fun, but it was also very educational. All of the different sessions that they had and the meetups and the trade show was amazing, and the companies that I met at the trade show was amazing. And yeah, I mean, it's a chance to connect with people who are passionate about what it is that you are as well. And I'll say, for anybody who's going for the first time, if you get to go next year, like I said, it was the first time I went. I started my first co-op rotation in 2016, so I'm coming up on 10. I'm saying I'm coming up on my 10-year anniversary in the industry, even though some people say co-ops don't count. I say it counts. Um, it's been 10 years and of me working in Revit, working and developing Revit, because one of the first people I worked with, his name's Jackson, still one of my good friends. He is a Revit expert. I mean, he's a savant when it comes to Revit. He is the one that taught me how to use the software and taught me how to do development and stuff like that. And so um, I've been working on it for almost 10 years, and I still was walking into the trade show or the convention center on Monday before the conference started to pick up my badge, and I had a bit of, um, imposter syndrome. It's like, okay, I'm going into this, should I be here? Am I going to get value from being here? Am I going to be valuable going back from this? And the answer 100% is going to be yes. So you'll feel that going in, but don't let it stop you. Just do your thing, be confident in what you're doing, and you'll be successful, and you'll bring back a lot of good tips.
Yeah, we went for the first time in like 20 years last year. So we had gone in like the early 2000s, and when we hadn't had a booth. So we went back last year, and yeah, just being there is just so energizing to connect
Absolutely.
with so many people.
And it's so much fun just being around people that are passionate about the same stuff you are. And I mean, if you're not passionate about Revit or the development and stuff like that, like, yeah, it might not be your crowd. But I mean, being on Thursday night, being at a train concert, on the floor full of people of that, like, the next day they're going back and they're going to be sitting behind a desk doing the same thing I'm doing is a pretty cool thought.
And what advice for someone trying ElectroBIM?
Yeah. So for that is going to be, take your time. um, and really kind of take time to look through and figure out how it works. So that was one of the things that I did, is I kind of sat down and I said, okay, I looked at what was going on. I looked at looked through the file structure, looked through everything that was happening, and then I actually took and I made a copy of your out of the box files, copied them into another folder within my ElectroBIM folder, and then I kind of started making changes to the other one. I did that just so I had a stock clean. I know it worked. Started making changes and said, okay, so this changed here. Where does that go? And then I wasn't afraid. Your support guys might hate me for saying this, but I wasn't afraid to reach out to your support guys.
They do not hate you. We anticipate and treasure all of the opportunity to talk to our customers.
Yeah, no, they're amazing. They every time I had a question, it was always answered immediately. I'm gonna put David here on the spot and give him credit for. I reached out when this project started. I said, we have a bunch of unit subs that are coming in 15 kV down to 480. What's the best way to do this? And I submitted just a help desk ticket, and I get an email back from David Robinson saying, hey, look at doing it this way. This should work. And then a couple weeks later, I get an invite for a webinar, and then I open it up and it was, hey, yeah, one of our customers was asking how we would do a unit sub, and this is the best way to do it. So, your question might be valuable to more people than just yourself. So it's the old adage of there's no such thing as a stupid question. So
no, we that's how we drive our training. Everything else we do is the feedback from you guys. So yeah, we really do appreciate all of that, and we use it and make sure that those questions are getting answered.
yeah.
All right. So where can people connect with you if they want to swap BIM tips?
Yeah, so the main way for me is going to be through LinkedIn. It's my name, Dave Fetzer, Fetzer. You're also able to, if you wanted to, reach out to me via, I'm on Instagram is another one that I'm always on. And that one there's a lot of sports stuff on there. If you want to follow me, it's the scoreboard guy. It's SCRBRD guy, GUI. And then also, I trust everybody on here. My email address, you can honestly reach out to me directly, is first name Dave.Fetzer, Fetzer @me.com. Just reach out, make sure you put something in the subject line about Revit or BIM or something like that. I'm happy to talk, happy to answer questions. And yeah, talk about ideas.
All right. Very good. Well, hey, thanks for coming on and sharing everything about Autodesk University and ElectroBIM.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right. You're welcome.